For years of lies, my wife admitted to cheating because she was bored. The text messages had stopped. The calls went unanswered. And just like that, she vanished. No warning, no explanation, just a series of empty silences. I still can't figure out how I ended up in this nightmare. For 17 years, I believed I knew everything about my wife, Ella. I thought I could read her like the back of my hand. But that night, when she disappeared, without a word, without so much as a goodbye, I realized how little I truly knew. It was a Tuesday evening when it all started. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through channels mindlessly, when I heard her footsteps in the hall. She had just come back from work, her usual cheerful self, or so I thought. But that night something felt off. Ella, 39, always had this effortless grace about her. Tall, with dark hair that cascaded like silk, eyes that always seemed to sparkle with a kind of mischief. Her skin was pale, smooth, like porcelain, and she had a body that made people notice without her even trying. We had 3 daughters, each a little copy of us, 11, 13, and 15. Our lives had seemed perfect on the surface. But perfection is often just an illusion, isn't it? Ella wasn't her usual self that night. There was a coldness in her eyes, something hidden deep behind the veneer of the woman I had loved for 2 decades. She quickly packed a small bag, her movements sharp and deliberate. Her face was flushed, her lips trembling, but she didn't say a word. Just before she left, she turned to look at me, but her gaze was vacant, like I wasn't even there. I thought maybe she had just had a rough day, but my gut told me otherwise. I didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. The door slammed behind her, and I sat frozen, staring at it. I tried to reach her through texts, but she didn't respond. I called her parents, nothing. A few minutes later, my oldest daughter came downstairs, looking confused. "Where's Mom?" she asked. I couldn't answer her. What was I supposed to say? I didn't know. My heart was pounding, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but something was terribly wrong. Ella had never acted like this before. Something was off, and I couldn't put my finger on it. The next few hours were a blur. I tried calling her brother, her friends, even a colleague from work. No one had seen her. Her parents eventually texted back saying she was with them, but that was it. No other explanation. They urged me to be patient, but patience was the last thing I had left. My mind was spiraling out of control. What was happening? Why wouldn't she talk to me? Was she really with her parents? Or was there something more sinister going on? I turned to my daughters and told them the only thing I could, that their mother was with Grandma and Grandpa for a while. I didn't want to scare them with my uncertainty. They'd ask where she was, and I'd give them some vague answer, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. But as I sat there, watching the girls go about their evening as if nothing was wrong, I felt it. The crushing weight of a secret I wasn't ready to face. It wasn't until 3 days later, after a wellness check and several hours of excruciating waiting, that I found out the truth. The bombshell was dropped like a sledgehammer, shattering everything I knew. Ella had been seeing someone else. For more than 4 years. My head reeled. For years? How had I missed it? How could she have kept this from me for so long? And then came the gut punch. He was dead. The man she'd been with, the one who had taken my wife away from me without me even knowing, had died suddenly from a heart attack. A cruel twist of fate that would haunt me forever. Couldn't breathe. The man who had taken my wife's heart was gone. But I was left with the wreckage. And now it was just me, alone with my daughters, trying to keep it all together. But the weight of the betrayal felt unbearable. What was I supposed to do with this new reality? How was I supposed to look at my wife the same way after everything she had done to us? It was only after my call to the police that I finally learned more. Ella's affair had been going on for years, and everyone, my in-laws, her friends, had known. I wasn't the last to find. I was the fool who'd been kept in the dark while the rest of the world knew what was happening behind closed doors. And so, there I was, a man stripped of everything he thought he knew, trying to hold together the fragile pieces of a family that no longer felt like his own. Ella came back the next day, tears streaming down her face, asking for forgiveness. But it wasn't that simple. Not anymore. There were too many questions I needed answers to. Too many lies I needed her to confess. But the hardest question of all? Why? Why would she do this to me, to our family? As I stood in the living room, staring at her, I was a man split in two. One part of me wanted to scream, to confront her, to demand the truth. The other part just wanted to walk away, to never look back, to leave this nightmare behind. But I couldn't. Not yet. Why? I finally asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why did you do this? Her response came, but it wasn't what I expected. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging for forgiveness. Instead, she told me it was because she was bored. She wanted excitement. She was tired of the routine, the monotony of family life. The truth, raw and brutal, fell from her lips, and in that moment, everything I thought I knew about our life, our love, came crashing down. I was left standing there, speechless, unable to comprehend the enormity of what had just been revealed. I had never seen her like this before. Ella stood there, her face pale, eyes red from crying, but not the kind of crying I had imagined. There were no desperate pleas for forgiveness, no real remorse, just emptiness. She told me the affair had started years ago, not after some tragic breakdown, not because of some flaw in our marriage, but because she simply got bored. The words stung, each one a dagger twisting into the very core of what I thought we had built together. You were bored, I repeated, almost in disbelief. You were bored, so you threw away everything we had? She lowered her gaze, unable or unwilling to meet my eyes. Yes, she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't know how to get out of the routine. I needed something more, something different. Her confession didn't hit me immediately. Instead, it settled into my chest, like an overwhelming weight that made it hard to breathe. I had always known her to be a woman who prided herself on honesty, someone who valued family above all else. But here she was, a stranger in front of me, someone who had betrayed that trust in the most heartless way imaginable. What had happened to the woman I had married? The woman I had laughed with, built a life with, made plans for our future with? My mind spun. This couldn't be real. How could it be? I had been with her since we were teenagers. We'd built a family, shared dreams. Everything had felt like it was supposed to last forever. But then, in a heartbeat, it all crumbled. And now she stood there, telling me she had been living a double life for 4 years with no remorse until she was caught. I wanted to scream at her, to demand why hadn't she come to me? Why hadn't she said anything before? I would have understood. We could have fixed things. But no, she chose this path. She'd chosen him. Who is he? I asked, barely able to contain my voice. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. His name is Jason, she said, voice soft. He's a colleague. He's older. He was there when I needed someone to talk to. And then we got closer. Her face flushed with shame, but I saw it. There was a flicker of guilt in her eyes. But guilt wasn't enough. Closer? I asked, my voice shaking with anger. You mean to tell me that for 4 years you've been sleeping with him while I was here? Raising our kids? Taking care of everything? Thinking you were by my side? She nodded, the tears starting again. But I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt disgusted. I had given her everything. And this was how she repaid me? Did you ever love me? I asked. My voice cracked, but I refused to let it break. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she just stood there, as if paralyzed. I watched her face, waiting for any hint of sincerity, but there was nothing. No confession, no apology that could undo the years of deceit. I loved you, she finally whispered. But I needed something more. Her words echoed in my mind over and over again. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I didn't. I stood there, cold and unmoving. The silence between us stretched on for what felt like hours. She stood in the doorway, arms hanging limply by her sides, while I stared at her, waiting for something, anything, that could explain the years of lies. But there was nothing. Couldn't even look at her anymore. Without a word, I turned and walked out of the room, my mind numb, my heart shattered. As I stepped outside, the weight of the situation hit me like a freight train. How had I missed the signs? How had I been so blind? But it wasn't just the affair that was weighing me down. It was the fact that my wife, the mother of my children, the woman I had spent half my life with, had abandoned me for something so trivial, so self-centered. The idea of finding excitement, of feeling alive again. But at what cost? At the cost of everything we had built. Later that night, as I sat alone in our bedroom, trying to process everything, I felt a deep sense of betrayal gnawing at me. It was as if the very foundation of my life had been pulled out from under me. All those years of memories, every laugh, every inside joke, every moment of happiness we had shared, it felt like a lie. But what hurt the most wasn't just the affair. It was the fact that she hadn't even been honest about it. She had let me live in a bubble, pretending that everything was fine while she was out there, with him. Jason. I couldn't stop thinking about him. Who was he? What did he have that I didn't? And why had she chosen him over me? Why hadn't she fought for us? Fought for our family? I ran my hands through my hair in frustration. There were so many unanswered questions. And I needed answers. But Ella wasn't ready to give them to me. She wasn't ready to confront the damage she had caused, the pain she had inflicted. That night, she didn't sleep in our bed. She stayed in the guest room. I could hear her crying through the thin walls, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. Not anymore. She had broken me, and I didn't know if I could ever put the pieces back together. The next morning, I tried to get my mind off everything. I got up early, took the kids to school, and tried to act normal. But inside, I was anything but. I felt like a man living in someone else's life. But the hardest part was coming home to the silence. Ella was still there, but it was different now. The woman who had once been my best friend, the one I confided in, the one I thought I knew better than anyone else, was now a stranger. The woman who had once kissed me goodnight and whispered that she loved me was now the same woman who had betrayed me in the worst way possible. And the worst part? She was asking for forgiveness. But I wasn't sure I was ready to give it. The next few days were the hardest of my life. Every time I looked at Ella, I felt like a stranger was standing in front of me. The woman I had once trusted with my whole heart was gone. She was still there physically, but everything that made her mine, everything that made us, had evaporated into thin air. I went through the motions of daily life. I got the kids ready for school, made breakfast, helped with homework, but all the while my mind was elsewhere. It was impossible to focus on anything other than the gnawing feeling of betrayal that wouldn't let go. I couldn't even look at her without feeling disgusted, not just by what she had done, but by how easily she had hidden it from me for so long. And yet, she kept apologizing. Every day, she would approach me, tears in her eyes, her voice trembling as she begged for forgiveness. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was lost. I was confused. I still love you, she would say, but the words fell flat. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to confront her. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to let her hide behind empty apologies any longer. It was Friday afternoon when I decided to do it. The kids were at school, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I found myself alone in the house with Ella. She was in the kitchen making lunch like everything was normal. But nothing about this was normal. Not anymore. I walked into the kitchen, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel the weight of what I was about to do, but I didn't care. I had to know the truth. Ella, I said, my voice cold, I need you to tell me everything. No more excuses, no more lies. I want to hear it all. She stopped, the knife she was holding slipping from her hand and clattering against the counter. She turned slowly to face me, her eyes wide with fear, but there was something else there too, guilt. It was written all over her face. I don't know if I can, she stammered, looking down at the floor as if she could escape the gravity of what was happening. Then I guess you don't care enough to save this marriage, I snapped. Because if you loved me, truly loved me, you'd want to fix this. You'd want to make things right. But instead, you've been hiding in your own lies for years. It's too late for that now, Ella. Her eyes flickered with pain at my words, but she didn't argue. She didn't try to deny it. She just stood there, silent. Took a deep breath, steadying myself before continuing. I want you to look me in the eyes and tell me everything. How did this start? What did I miss? She hesitated for a long moment, as though weighing the cost of telling the truth. Finally, her voice cracked as she spoke. It started a long time ago before Jason. I don't even know how it happened, she said softly, her eyes misting over. I just started to feel lost, empty. And then Jason came into my life and he was everything I needed. He made me feel alive again. He made me feel special. I could feel the anger rising in my chest. I took a step toward her, my fists clenching at my sides. So that's it? You decided to cheat on me because you felt bored? Because you weren't getting enough attention at home? She shook her head. No, it wasn't just that. It was everything. The routine, the kids, the stress. It all just became too much. And then he was there, offering me everything I thought I needed. I got so caught up in the excitement of it all, I didn't think about what I was doing to you, to the kids. I never meant for it to go this far. I was seething now. The betrayal was one thing, but hearing her justify it, hearing her make excuses for every moment she spent with him, it was too much. And all the while I was here trusting you, I said, my voice shaking with anger. I trusted you with everything. Our kids, our life, our future. And you threw it all away for what? A few moments of excitement. Ella's face crumpled, and the tears flowed freely now. But I wasn't going to let her off that easy. Not this time. You don't get to cry now, I said harshly. You don't get to act sorry after everything you've done. You're not sorry because you got caught. You're sorry because your perfect little world is falling apart. That's the truth, isn't it? She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. She was choking on her guilt, and I wasn't done yet. Tell me about Jason. Was he the only one? How long did this go on? I demanded, unable to keep the tremor from my voice. What did you do with him? Was I even a thought in your mind? Ella's eyes shifted, as though the weight of the question was too much to bear. It started off slow, she said. At first, it was just talking, long talks about life, about everything I was feeling. And then one night, it went further. I don't know what happened, but I couldn't stop it. It became something I couldn't escape. Her words were raw, but they didn't do anything to ease the pain I felt. Nothing could. The image of her with him, her hands in his, her lips on his, haunted me. What about the kids, Ella? What about us? I asked. My voice cracked as I fought to keep it together. Did any of this even matter to you? Her face contorted with emotion. Of course it mattered, but I was selfish. I was so selfish, and I lost sight of everything. I thought I could keep it all in balance, but I couldn't. And I'm so sorry. I am. Her apology was like a distant echo, fading into the background. Words meant nothing now. They were empty, hollow, and they could never erase what had been done. I stood there, staring at her, feeling both nothing and everything at once. This was the woman I had loved. This was the woman I had given everything to. And now, she was just another stranger in my life. But I had questions, more questions. And I needed answers, no matter how much it hurt. I need you to tell me one thing, Ella, I said, my voice quiet but firm. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you come to me when you first felt lost? Why wait until now? Her gaze faltered. I didn't know how. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to face the reality of what I was doing. I laughed bitterly, unable to stop myself. You didn't want to face the truth? The truth? You didn't care about the truth when you were lying to my face for years. I turned away, fighting to keep the tears at bay. The realization hit me all at once. This was over. This marriage was over. There was no coming back from this. I couldn't look at her anymore. Each glance made my stomach turn, as if she were physically infecting me with her lies. Her presence in the house, in my house, was a constant reminder of the betrayal, the hollow promises, and the years I had wasted trusting her. The woman I had thought I knew, the woman I had loved, was nothing more than a ghost now. I left the kitchen, the scene still lingering in the air, thick and suffocating. Ella's words echoed in my mind, and I couldn't escape them. I was bored. I couldn't shake that phrase. That one phrase that had shattered everything. For years of lies, of sneaking around behind my back, of pretending to be something she wasn't. And for what? For boredom. I spent the night in the guest room, trying to drown out the thoughts that kept creeping in. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him. Every time I heard the house creak or the wind blow against the window, I felt like I was suffocating. I wanted to scream, to break everything, but instead, I lay there, silently fuming, questioning everything that had led to this point. In the morning, things didn't feel any better. I woke up to the same cold, empty house, the same house I had once considered a sanctuary, but now it felt like prison. The walls were closing in, the silence was deafening, and I couldn't escape it. I tried to go about my day, make breakfast for the girls, and pretend that everything was normal, but it was impossible. Every time I looked at them, I saw my own confusion reflected in their eyes. They knew something was wrong. I wasn't fooling anyone, not even myself. Ella tried to approach me again, as she had every day since her confession, but I was done. I was so far gone, I didn't know how to come back from this. She couldn't fix it with tears. She couldn't fix it with words. She had broken something inside me that couldn't be repaired. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky, her hands clasped together in front of her. "I don't want to talk," I said, my voice cutting through the air like a knife. I didn't want to hear anything more from her. I didn't care about her excuses, her apologies, or her guilt. It was all just noise now, a distraction from the truth. The truth was that she had destroyed me, and there was no going back from that. Her eyes filled with tears again, but I didn't flinch. I didn't feel sorry for her. I didn't care how bad she felt. My world had shattered, and nothing she said or did could put the pieces back together. "Please," she begged. "I love you. I never wanted to hurt you. I just didn't know how to fix it, how to fix us." "You don't love me," I spat. "You loved him, and I can't compete with that. I won't. You chose him, Ella. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it." Her face crumpled at my words, but I didn't feel an ounce of guilt. She had no right to ask for my sympathy. She had no right to ask for anything from me. I walked away. I couldn't look at her anymore. I couldn't stand being in the same room with her. The pain, the betrayal, it was suffocating. But it wasn't just the affair that hurt. It was the fact that she had never once considered me, considered us before she made her decisions. As the days passed, it became clearer that Ella wasn't ready to face the consequences of her actions. She wanted forgiveness, but she wasn't willing to do the hard work it would take to rebuild anything. She just wanted the pain to go away. But that wasn't how this worked. You didn't get to destroy someone's life and then expect them to pick up the pieces for you. I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to get out of the house, had to get away from her, from everything. I grabbed my car keys, threw on my jacket, and walked out. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to escape. I ended up at a park, sitting on a bench, staring at the empty space in front of me. My mind was a whirlwind of anger, sadness, and confusion. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel anymore. All I knew was that my life, the life I had carefully built over the past 2 decades, had come crashing down, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart, but it didn't help. The ache in my chest wouldn't go away. I couldn't stop seeing her face, couldn't stop hearing her voice. The way she'd said, "I was bored." "Why?" I muttered under my breath. "Why would you do this to me?" I closed my eyes, trying to block it all out, but I couldn't. The pain was all-consuming, and for the first time in my life, I didn't know who I was anymore. Was I the man she had promised to love forever, or was I just a fool, a pawn in her selfish game? When I returned home, the house felt different. The air was thick with tension, But there was something else there too, a new kind of silence. Ella wasn't in the living room when I walked in, nor in the kitchen. I found her in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, her face pale and worn. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm so sorry for everything." I stood there, frozen, staring at her. But this time I didn't feel anything. No anger, no sadness, just nothing. It was as if the person I had once known, the woman I had once loved, had died. And in her place was a stranger asking for forgiveness. "Sorry doesn't cut it anymore," I said, my voice hollow. "Sorry doesn't change what you did." I walked past her without another word, the finality of it settling in. I was done. There was no going back from this. Ella sat there, alone in the silence of the room, her tears falling like rain. But I didn't stay to watch her cry. I had to leave. For me. For my girls. For my sanity. The house was quiet when I woke up the next morning. The weight of everything that had happened still hung in the air. But this time, there was no panic in my chest. No burning need to fix things or force any answers. I had already done that. I had already demanded the truth. The problem wasn't with the truth anymore. It was with me. The days that followed were an endless cycle of numbness. Ella kept trying to talk to me, to apologize, but I was done listening. Every time she spoke, it felt like more lies were coming out of her mouth. Even if she didn't mean for them to. She had created a world built on secrets and lies, and no apology could undo that. And yet, there she was crying, begging for forgiveness, promising that she would change. But I couldn't believe her anymore. There was no trust left. How could there be? She had been living a lie for 4 years, and I had no idea. She was right about one thing, her boredom had killed everything we had. But that wasn't all. It was her disregard for me, for the family, that had been the true poison. I could see it in her eyes. The desperation, the fear. She didn't want to lose everything, not after she had already destroyed it all. She wanted to hold on, to pick up the pieces of what she thought was a broken marriage. But I couldn't give that to her. Not anymore. The hardest part was seeing how much she was hurting. I hated myself for the anger I felt when I saw her tears. But I couldn't help it. My mind kept replaying the same questions. Why? How could you do this to me? How could you be so selfish? The truth was, I didn't have answers. I didn't think I would ever get answers that made sense. That afternoon, I finally made a decision. I called my lawyer. The words felt heavy in my mouth as I said them aloud. "I want to file for divorce." It was official now. There was no going back. It wasn't an easy decision, and part of me, the part that was still clinging to the hope that this could somehow be fixed, didn't want to follow through. But I knew deep down that it was the only way to move forward. I couldn't stay in a marriage that had been built on lies. I couldn't continue to live in a house where the air was thick with betrayal. When I told Ella, she collapsed. Her sobs echoed through the house, but they didn't reach me. I felt nothing. Not because I didn't care, but because I had spent weeks drowning in anger, in confusion, in the overwhelming weight of her betrayal. Now all that was left was a cold, numb emptiness. "I don't want this," she begged through her tears, her voice breaking. "Please, I don't want to lose you. I love you. You had your chance," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "You had years to make things right, and you chose him. You chose him over me, over us." She didn't respond to that. She just sat there, broken, silent, as if she had no more words to offer. I didn't wait for any more pleading. I left the room, leaving her alone in the house that we had once shared. It felt like a lifetime ago, those days when we had laughed together, dreamed together, built a family together. Now all of that was gone. The next few days were strange. I was living in a state of limbo, where the pain wasn't as sharp but still clung to my bones. I went through the motions for the girls. They needed me. They needed to see that their father wasn't completely lost, that their world hadn't entirely collapsed. I did my best to keep it together for them, but there were moments when I was alone, that the grief would hit me like a freight train and I would just break. I kept replaying the day Ella confessed. I kept seeing her standing there, her eyes full of fear, her hands trembling as she told me the truth. I didn't want to forgive her, couldn't, and maybe that was what hurt the most. Knowing that, despite everything, I couldn't find it in myself to forgive her. But something inside me changed over the next few weeks. I began to realize that my anger wasn't just for her. It was for myself, too, for allowing this to go on for so long without seeing the signs, for believing in a version of our marriage that didn't exist. I had blamed her, and she was to blame, but I had been complicit in my own denial. It wasn't a sudden epiphany. It wasn't one moment of clarity that made it all make sense. It was a slow, painful process of accepting that this was my reality now. Divorce was not an end, it was a beginning, and while the future was uncertain, it was mine to shape. I wasn't going to let this define me. I wasn't going to let her choices, her lies, her affair, take away my ability to move forward. I owed it to myself and to my girls to rebuild. Not with her, but without her. Ella moved out a few weeks later. The house felt quieter without her, but there was something else too. A sense of peace. A sense of finality. It wasn't easy. It wasn't painless. But it was the right choice. Ella tried to reach out after she left. She sent me texts, asked if we could meet to talk about the divorce, about the girls, but I didn't respond. What was there to say? I had given her everything I had, and she had chosen a path that led us here. She wanted closure. But the truth was, I already had my closure. And then, one evening, I received a letter from her. It was long, filled with apologies and sorrow, and at the end, she asked me one question that caught me off guard. If you could go back, would you choose me again? I didn't have to think long to know the answer. No, I wouldn't, because I had learned something valuable in all this. I had learned that I could survive, that I was more than the man she had abandoned, that I was capable of moving forward, of finding happiness again. The next morning, I woke up with a new sense of purpose. I was no longer the man who had been betrayed, broken, left behind. I was someone else now, a man who could rebuild, who could thrive. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most shocking part of it. Well, this journey has been one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. Betrayal, heartbreak, and the weight of knowing someone you loved didn't love you back in the way you thought. But in the end, the lesson is clear. We are all capable of resilience. We have the strength to pick up the pieces and create something new, even from the darkest moments. No matter how hard things get, you always have the power to rebuild your life. If you've gone through something similar, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you found your way out. If you think this story resonates with you, please leave a comment, share your advice, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories. Thank you for listening.